So I want you all to picture this. You're a nurse on the way home from a busy shift. Your 8-year-old son is in the back of the car. As the sun is just going down, you stop at the shop to get some milk and some cereal. You pull up outside the shop and leave your son in the back seat. You go into the shop for about 3 to 4 minutes and then return to your car. You get in and look in the wing mirror, and to your surprise, another child is in your car. Not just sat on the back seat with your son, but very uncomfortably close to your son, with their legs touching despite having the whole of the back seat free. Then the boy looks up and you see 2 solid black eyes looking at you from the back seat. Everyone, welcome back to the 16th episode of Spooky and Kooky.
As always, if you love anything spooky, paranormal, conspiracy, anything horror, anything kooky, you're in the right place.
Yeah, and if you're coming back, it's nice to see you again. And if you're new here, hello, hope you enjoy.
So this episode, we're going to be doing spooky kids.
Yeah, because let's face it, kids are just creepy sometimes.
They really are.
Yeah, so we've got some stories for you. So turn the lights down low, get in the mood, because we're going to give you a proper spook today.
Okay, so this is the story of Lily. It started about 6 months ago when my 7-year-old daughter, Emily, began talking about her new friend, Lily. At first, I thought nothing of it. Imaginary friends are common at her age, and she'd always had a vivid imagination. But as the weeks went by, it started to unsettle me how real Lily seemed to Emily. Emily would set a place at the dinner table for Lily and insist I not sit on the empty chair because Lily's sitting there. She'd spend hours in her room laughing and talking as if someone were there with her. Once, I went in to check on her and heard Emily whisper, "Don't worry, I won't tell Mummy about the well."
No, that would be it.
I felt a chill but brushed it off, thinking maybe she'd picked up some odd phrases from TV or books. Kids say strange things after all. I tried not to overthink it. The turning point came one evening. Emily came running into the living room, clutching her favourite stuffed bear and looking frightened. She told me Lily was angry and she kept saying, "She doesn't like you, Mummy. She says you shouldn't have moved here."
Of course.
Yeah. My heart was pounding, but I told Emily it's just her imagination and that Lily couldn't hurt anyone. Emily stared at me with those wide, innocent eyes and said in a whisper, "She says she was here first, and she remembers." The words haunted me. I decided to dig a little deeper, thinking maybe this Lily was based on something Emily had seen. I started researching the history of our house, and what I found still gives me nightmares. Our home, built in the 1800s, had been the site of a tragic accident nearly 50 years ago. A young girl named Lily Reynolds had fallen into the well in our backyard and drowned. The well had since been covered, but the story was well documented in old newspapers that I found online. She was 7 years old, the same age as Emily. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to scare Emily by telling her the truth, but I also felt like I couldn't ignore it. That night, I went into Emily's room after she'd fallen asleep. I noticed her bed was surrounded by a circle of stuffed animals, all meticulously placed as though they were standing guard. Her small voice startled me. "She doesn't like it when you come in here."
Oh.
I froze. Emily was sitting up, her eyes still closed as if she was sleep-talking. "Lily says you're in her way," she murmured, her voice eerie and detached. "She wants you to leave." It felt like the air in the room had turned ice cold. I backed out slowly, heart racing, and decided I couldn't stay in that house another night. The next morning, I packed up our things and took Emily to stay with my sister for a while. Since we left the house, Emily hasn't mentioned Lily again, but I can't shake the feeling that Lily might still be there, waiting for the next family to move in, her story left unfinished. Every now and then, when Emily is playing alone, I think I still hear the faint laughter that doesn't belong to her.
Do you know, what was Lily telling Emily about the well, though?
Probably that she like fell down it.
I don't know. Like, don't worry, I won't tell mummy about the well. It's like,
Or
are they
maybe
gonna
like,
push her in it?
you want to go in the well? It's so
Yeah,
fun, but don't
yeah.
tell anyone.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That's creepy. It's honestly, I think she did the right thing, because you always see in horror movies where the dad is like, no, we're not moving. But she did the right thing and moved out, because I'd be out of there so quick.
Yeah, literally. You wouldn't just hang around, wait for something horrible to happen, because that's what they always do. They're like, oh, kids.
Kids say the darndest things. I feel like the imaginary friend thing, I feel like, because it's me, I would be a little bit creeped out, but then I'd rationalise it and be like, no, kids, it's literally just normal kid stuff.
Yeah, I would freak out, but I would be like on the inside. Yeah.
And rationalise it out. But if I heard her for hours talking, I'd be a bit like, that's a long time to be imagining someone with you.
Let's go find some real friends.
Yeah.
Did
That's
you
enough
have
of Emily now?
Did you have an imaginary friend?
No, I didn't.
No.
I obviously didn't have an active enough imagination. Did you?
Well, I kind of just made one up. I didn't actually see anything. Like, I didn't see any ghosts or anything. But yeah, I did.
But isn't that what it is? You just pick an imaginary friend?
Well, yeah, but then some kids, it seems,
Not.
actually have
Yeah.
a not so imaginary friend. I never had a ghost friend.
Yeah. No, I remember keeping lots of woodlouses and like saying that they would talk to me, but obviously they wouldn't.
I don't know if that's cute or just really weird.
Odd.
Oh, I'll tell a past life story.
Okay.
This one is, their name is Helpful Name. It's their Reddit name. And it says, not a mum, but I was a nanny for many years. This is going to be long and I apologise in advance. One of my little ones, yeah, I love the long ones, don't be sorry. One of my little ones, 2 years old, an incredibly smart child, way ahead developmentally in every way. He used to like to tell me things while we got ready for bed. It was almost always these weird stories which would start, when I was an old lady. And there were always very specific little day in the life type things, which I quickly realised went beyond the life experience and typical vocabulary of a 2-year-old. Over a few months, he kept adding very consistently to this story. He would also sometimes play as this old lady, with a cloth over his head and walking slowly as if his back pained him. I can relate.
Like a little babushka.
Yeah. Grocery shopping or playing with his sister's dolls as if they were her grandchildren were his favourite things to do when he did this. He added some very specific details like how many children she had, 4 daughters and a son, and how many grandchildren. Her husband had died in his 50s, same age as one of his uncles, from a lung disease. One of her daughters had died in her 30s in a car accident, leaving 2 children who she took in with the help of another daughter. She had a bad back and pain in her feet, and one of her daughters would rub her feet to help with the pain. All but one of her children were married. The unmarried daughter lived with her, and she was worried that she would never marry herself. She remembered dying. She had been crossing a street and was hit by a car. She described how people stood around her, where it hurt, how someone eventually lifted her into a car, in brackets, no ambulances, and took her to a hospital where she later died. I was not his only nanny, and he was consistent with these stories. Us nannies would get together and swap stories, and I would write them down because I had been fascinated with the phenomena like past lives before, and I wanted to see where it all went. He also described the house and neighbourhood they lived in. This is especially interesting as this kid came from a super wealthy family and he had never seen any kind of housing or poverty that he was describing. He also talked about living by the seaside. Months into this unfolding, we visited a seaside city on the other side of the country. One day, a family member there was holding a birthday party, so we piled into the van to drive over, and our driver got lost. In brackets, this is pre-Google Maps and smartphone. We ended up driving through this extremely poor neighbourhood, and suddenly the little boy started shouting and screaming and insisted we turn down a couple of specific streets. He started pointing out the window and telling us things that he was recognising from when I was an old lady. It matched to what he'd previously described in general, and we were all so interested we let him direct us where to go, so we were already going to be late for the party. He accurately described what we would see around the next turn several times, but got extremely confused and upset when we got to where her house was, because it was now a store. The driver leaned out the window and asked a nearby person what had been there before the store, and he was told houses. We never went back there or were able to get any additional verification. Totally understandably, his parents were concerned about his storytelling and how vivid and strange it was. So after this dramatic incident, we made an active effort to redirect him to other stories and play types. As he approached 3, he started telling less and less of these stories, and they got less and less specific. By about 3.5, he couldn't even remember us telling those stories about being an old lady, and he thought we were joking with him. To this day, over 25 years later, I can't explain how he knew those details.
Young.
It's always young children as well.
He was very young.
Yeah.
Why is it only like specific kids? Like, if that's something that happens, why don't we all have that?
But maybe we do, and we just don't, because you get to a point where you don't remember it.
It's weird.
Yeah, like I remember...
Like they leave you at some certain point.
Yeah, like your mind just like moves on almost. I remember I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about past lives. And there was these set of twins that could literally pinpoint, they were hit by cars, and they could literally pinpoint what bones were broken and everything. And then when they got older, they never remembered even having the conversation, nothing about it.
So weird.
Yeah.
And their age as well, it just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so this thing that I looked into, it generally terrified me, I'm not going to lie. So I want you all to picture this. You're a nurse on the way home from a busy shift. Your 8-year-old son is in the back of the car. As the sun is just going down, you stop at the shop to get some milk and some cereal. You pull up outside the shop and leave your son in the back seat. You go into the shop for about 3 to 4 minutes, and then return to your car. You get in and look in the wing mirror, and to your surprise, another child is in your car. Not just sat on the back seat with your son, but very uncomfortably close to your son, with their legs touching, despite having the whole of the back seat free. Then the boy looks up and you see 2 solid black eyes looking at you from the back seat. Panicked, you get out the car, run to your son, and then grab him out the back seat. Unsure what to do, you go in the shop and get some help from one of the staff there. They go outside for you when you explain someone was in your car that you didn't know. However, when they get there, your car is empty with the doors wide open. Well, this is the experience of a lady called Sharon from Iowa. And she was just on her way home from work on a normal day. After this, the guy from the shop offered to call the police, but Sharon felt silly. Did she really want to call the police on a child?
It had hollowed eyes.
I know. So instead, as she was still afraid to get back in the car, she called her husband Tom and asked if he could come and drive her car home, and she would drive his car home with her son. He thought it was strange, but he heard the concern in her voice, so he came to the shop and swapped cars with Sharon. He spoke to the guy in the shop for a bit, then went out to get in the car. When he got in the car, he was hit by a rancid smell, which was overpowering, so he thought maybe someone left food in the back seat. That went off, so he began searching for the source of the smell all over the car, but could not locate anything, so he decided to start the journey home with the windows rolled down. Sharon by this point is at home with her son, in the sheer panic, she hadn't yet asked him what actually happened and why the child was in the car. So she speaks to her son and asks him if he knows him, how he got in, did he get in on his own? And he explained he did not know the boy and that he had invited him in because in fact he had asked him if he could come back to theirs and play, and said, "I can't come in unless you open the door and invite me."
Oh no.
So her son said he did ask and he did let him in. Tom did not return home, and later Sharon received a call from the hospital that Tom had wrapped her car around a telephone pole and needed to be kept in for observations. When Tom was able to speak to Sharon, he said it was weird because he could not remember how he got into a car accident. He remembers leaving the shop and then next thing he knows he's in the hospital. Tom was fine and he returned home a couple of days later, but when he did, their son fell ill. It began as though he had a cold, which got worse, and when they took him to the doctors, they were told it was just the flu, so to get bed rest and drink plenty of fluid. However, he didn't get better after a week or so and began having symptoms of measles, but he was vaccinated against this, and the test for measles returned back negative. Over several months, the child was plagued with symptoms like vomiting, lesions on his body and flu-like symptoms, and doctors were unable to find a cause. The child eventually did get better and return to his normal self. However, the doctors were never able to actually say what happened.
Oh.
This is just one of the many stories from around the world of black-eyed children. In 1966, a reporter, Brian Bethel from Texas, was in a car park of a movie theatre, sat in his car. All of a sudden, he got a knock on his window. He looked up and 2 children between the ages of 9 and 12 were standing at his window, and one was standing a bit in front of the other. Brian rolled down his window to see what they wanted. He got an instant feeling of unease, but he didn't really know why. And because it was kids, he tried to shrug it off, this feeling, and rationalise it. He wasn't showing his unease outwardly. The child in front started speaking in almost a mechanical voice and said that they had left their money at home and needed a lift to get their money to see a movie. Brian, because of his unease, did not let them in the car, and again the child in front persisted and said,
"Come on, mister, let us in. We can't come in until you let us in."
They became increasingly persistent the more Brian stalled them and said no, and Brian noted they seemed to know he was anxious, as they appeared to be trying to calm him, even though he was not outwardly showing it, which made his sense of unease grow larger. He was just about to let them in, his finger on the unlock button, but at this moment the kids lifted up their heads, and to his horror he saw pure black eyes. At this point, he rolled up the window and started to back out the car parking space. When the children saw what he was doing, they started pounding on the window. Brian carried on leaving and drove off. As he was exiting the car park, he looked up in his wing mirror, and the children were gone. He was terrified by this experience and decided to publish a report in the newspaper, and he actually does not like to speak about it publicly. And he never accepted money from talking about this experience. And to come out about something like this, it could have actually hurt his career.
Yeah.
Like, if it was nonsense, people would have, discredited him. So he wouldn't have done it unless he really believed that he saw something this day.
Yeah.
So Brian is the first story that was ever reported about the black-eyed children. But since Brian reported it, many people who had had these experiences kept it to themselves, as they felt silly coming forward or were scared to what people might say. However, Brian's stories appeared in the newspaper, the floodgates opened, and many people came forward with their own stories to tell, which I have a couple more for you. And it became apparent that these kids have been around for a while. There are things that many of the sightings have in common. The kids are usually not alone and they're in pairs or more. If you decline their request, they become persistent and more angry. They seem to be able to know what you're thinking. They hide their eyes at first. Their voices are usually flat and mechanical, and they don't reply to what you're saying as though they are talking from a script. And I heard someone describe this as, you know, when you go on a customer service call,
Yeah.
and you've got an automated person,
Yeah.
and you're like, I want to speak to a representative, and they're like, do you need help with your plan or
Yeah.
something? It's like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
And they are always usually in old-fashioned clothes or black hoodies. So those are the two varieties that you get. The 2 stories I've told you about are sightings which are out and about. However, there is a more terrifying, invasive experience that people report, which is where the kids will come and knock on the door, as 37-year-old David Kessel found out when he went for a holiday break in a guest house on a ranch just outside of Dallas. Him and his girlfriend Megan were having a great time on the ranch. However, one night the animals on the ranch started acting weird. The cats started snarling at the doors, and horses were kicking in their stalls. A storm began to roll in, so David headed inside before the rain came. Moments later, a knocking on the door started, and thinking it was Megan, he answered. But instead of Megan, it was 2 children between the ages of 12 and 14, and then they were joined by a third, taller and skinnier child. They all had black hoodies on and were looking down, hiding their faces. They asked to come in as they had gotten lost in the woods, and David knew this was strange, as there was an electric gate that was locked leading into the property, and they were in the middle of nowhere, so he already knew that this wasn't right. Instead of letting them in, he stood and spoke to them to try and stall them from coming in, and looking over their shoulder for his girlfriend. One of the boys locked eyes with David, and that's when he saw the dark, bottomless pits that were his eyes. The boy smiled, revealing black teeth, and became insistent to come in. David continued declining, so they started to laugh and mock him, saying that he would die alone. He slammed the door and locked it, and later Megan returned to the guest house and said to David she had not seen anyone on the property.
Why, if they want to come in, would they then just get worse and worse and worse?
I know, you're not helping yourself.
No. Oh. Black teeth.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So another story is from the Midwest in the US of A, about a prison guard named Paul. His wife and son were out of town, so he got home and was making a sandwich for himself. He heard a soft knock at the door, and at first he didn't even recognise it as a knock, so he continued to make his sandwich. And then the knocking got louder, so he went to the door and was met by 2 children about the ages of 12 and 14. He didn't recognise these kids, which was strange because he knew all the kids in the neighbourhood, so he was confused. They didn't say anything, just stood there with their head down, so Paul asked what he could do for them. They looked up and said they wanted to stop in for a bit, and Paul said, "I think you must have the wrong house," because he didn't know them. And they said,
"Oh well, it's getting late. Can we come in for a bit?"
Paul noticed it didn't seem like they were listening or responding to what he was saying, but reading off a script. Paul was thoroughly disturbed. He felt they were ignoring him but focusing on him all at the same time. He then saw their eyes, but before he could react to the fact that their eyes were pools of black, the boy in front said it
would be good if you can let us in now. You don't have to think about it, just let us in.
Paul began getting a fight or flight response, and he felt very uneasy. He yelled, "Get off my porch," and then stood against the door with his eyes squeezed shut. He began hearing knocking at the door. He turned and looked at the glass panel by the door and saw 2 black eyes looking in on him, and the boy lifted his hand and began rapping on the glass. Paul ran to his bedroom to get his gun, and when he returned and flung open the door, the porch was empty. He spoke to friends and neighbours later on about the incident and asked if anyone knew of any kids matching this description, or if it had been anyone else, as he thought, in the light of day and a rational mind, it could have just been kids playing pranks. However, no one had seen kids matching that description, or knew of them, or no one had the same experience.
No, thank you.
Right, so many people have many different theories about who or what the children are. Some believe, due to their appearance and predatory nature, they are vampires. They seem to prey on humans' natural instincts to not be scared of children, and when they sense unease, they appear to try and mitigate this and state that they are just children and there's nothing to be afraid of, almost trying to hypnotise you to let them in. Other people believe they are demons who want your soul, and if you let them in, they will take a part of your soul. Other people believe they are spirits from children who have passed away, and this is substantiated by reports from Staffordshire, where a young girl was abducted by a serial killer and killed, and reports of her walking around the woods where she was taken with black eyes started to appear, and the girl from the witness accounts matched the girl's appearance. Others believe they are part of an alien race. Aliens again, it always comes back to aliens.
Yeah.
Called the Greys, as they also have solid black eyes and their skin is almost plasticky and very pale, which again is like the Greys. So people have theorised the Greys could be doing some kind of breeding project, and these kids are hybrids of the Greys. However, people don't know why, and the theories on why they would do this and what the children are doing vary greatly. And one of the theories is world domination. I don't know how they got there, but yeah. Okay. It seems if you let them in, bad things or mysterious goings-on begins to occur, as with the story of Sharon and Tom. An elderly couple in the middle of nowhere, Vermont, heard 3 loud knocks on their door. They opened the door and saw 2 children, a boy and a girl.
"Parents will be here soon. May we come in?"
The children did not make eye contact and just stood in the doorway. The elderly couple were hesitant, but after a while they let the boy and girl inside. The kids settled on the couch, and the wife made some hot cocoa, and the husband asked some questions that went unanswered. The wife returned and noticed her cat was scared and angry with the children.
"May we please use the restroom?"
The wife looked at the kids and she finally saw them. The children's eyes were as black as a starless universe. She directed them to the bathroom and returned to her husband, who was covering his face. "Did you see their eyes?" The husband then showed her his hand full of blood from a nosebleed, which he wasn't prone to getting nosebleeds. The power suddenly went out in the house and turned as dark as the kids' eyes. The wife headed to the restroom and was confronted by 2 voices into the hall, uttering,
"Our parents are here."
The kids then exited. The wife then noticed there was 2 men at the end of the driveway. The men were very tall and slender. The wife waved but did not receive the same friendly gesture. The 2 men and the children then drove away together in one car. The power then came back on a little after the kids left. Throughout the next week, weird things happened in the house. 3 out of 4 cats went missing, and the 4th had been found dead in a pool of its own blood.
Oh.
The husband continued to have nosebleeds and finally went to the doctor where he was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of skin cancer.
Oh my
Sadly.
God. Oh, that's so weird. It doesn't seem like they would be ghosts because the stuff that they say is weird. It doesn't make sense.
It's
So
bizarre.
they've got to be something else.
And these eyes, they're not just like black pupils, like the whole eye is black.
Like there's nothing there.
Yeah. Some people say it's just like holes and there are no eyes.
Yeah.
But other people say it's like black eyes.
Like they're shells.
Yeah.
Ugh. Because it would make sense if it was something else to use something that is inconspicuous. Like you say, like people wouldn't really be scared of a child initially.
So people also think the clothing they're wearing has started to change. So obviously there was reports of them in old-fashioned clothing, but now it's mainly hoodies. So maybe whoever is doing this and for whatever for, we're like, it's a bit inconspicuous.
Yeah.
We need to blend in a bit more. So let's change to hoodies. Let's change to more modern day clothing, and it won't look so out of place. So that's another thing that people say.
Oh, that's really creepy. I don't like that.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Usually I get a little bit creeped out when I'm researching this stuff, but it doesn't creep me out too much, if that makes sense. But this, I was researching it and it gave me like goosebumps. I was like, nah, this is weird. I'm not having that turn up at my door.
Yeah. At least if you say no, they actually can't come in though.
Yeah.
That's something.
But what would you do if you saw their eyes? Because you would know then that this isn't...
I think just from the way that they
human.
seem to start the conversation is weird.
Yeah, the script that they read off
so
of,
you
it's
already
strange.
would be like...
It's definitely
No.
something not human that's preying on something.
Yeah,
but I just
or-
don't know what they want.
Either that or I would just expect, like, people's parents have made them do it, and if I let them in, a man's just going to storm the door and rob me or something.
Because some people thought they were pranks, and it was just a really weird prank, and they got the contact lenses offline or whatever. But this was back in the... Like, this has been going on for quite a while. Like, Brian wrote in the newspaper in 1966, but this was going on way before then, so they couldn't just go on Amazon and get them.
And just why? I don't get it. I will do my little story and then I'll end on my longer one. When my son was first learning to talk, he would tell us about something called Purple Mummy. It could be an imaginary friend, but these details are a little creepy. Here's a few of the Purple Mummy details. Purple Mummy is all purple, with long hair and bright white eyes. In brackets, at the time he mixed up purple with black, so he could have meant that she was all black. Purple Mummy picks him up at night and turns the lights off. We would often find my son out of his crib in the morning, which would mean him crawling over the railings and to the ground. At the time when he was barely walking, definitely found the lights in his room off a few times too, even though he's terrified of the dark. Purple Mummy needs a bandage because she has blood everywhere. Purple Mummy has no smile, meaning a mouth. Purple Mummy can take her head off. Purple Mummy really doesn't like Daddy.
Oh.
He told us all of this stuff for maybe a year or a little more. If we ever asked where she was, he'd point to the same spot, a corner of the room behind his open closet door. He would also wake up crying almost every night during this time. Once, during a really rough night, my wife went to ask him what was wrong, and his answer was, "Purple Mummy won't let me sleep."
Oh.
It was horrendous.
takes off her head.
Yeah. Oh, God. I know. Imagine, for a year or maybe more. I couldn't.
Jesus.
I couldn't do it. So this one is about Susie, another imaginary friend. Eliza was an easy baby. I never experienced the terrible twos, and she's been my sole reason for existence. Her dad never stuck around, so it's just been me and her against the world. She's 6 now, and it's only recently that I've felt the stresses of being a parent. When Eliza first mentioned Susie, I was excited at the thought that she was getting to an age where she was smart enough to create her own imaginary friend. I played along at first, setting an extra plate at the dinner table and asking Eliza how she became friends with Susie and what Susie liked to eat. Eliza told me that Susie loved cake. What child wouldn't? So when I next baked one, I sent her to school with an extra slice for Susie. This is when things started to get weird.
This mum's an enabler, and the fact she even got excited about it just tells me everything I need to know.
Eliza came home with one bit of cake still left in her lunchbox. I asked her if Susie didn't like it, and she told me, Susie doesn't go to school, Mummy, that's silly, Susie's too big. I tried to brush it off, but the next time Susie came up in conversation, only 2 days later, it wasn't so easy to ignore. What happened to your hair, Eliza? I asked, noting the complicated fishtail braid I'd never been able to successfully create in my own hair,
They're
let alone
complex
hers.
as well.
Yeah.
They're difficult.
Susie did it for me. Isn't it pretty, Mummy? Heart pounding and fake smile plastered on my face, I walked up to Eliza's room, expecting to open the door and find some sort of monster sitting there, but there was nothing. Things were quiet for a few days, and then around a week after the hair incident, Susie upped her game. Eliza woke me screaming, and I ran into her room to find her sobbing on the bed, clutching her rabbit, Roger. What's wrong? I said. Susie wouldn't let me sleep, and she kept saying I had to go with her, but I'm tired. I asked if Susie was here with us, and she told me Susie had run away because she didn't want me to see her. I asked why, and she said that she didn't want me to be angry with her. I saw her clutching her arm, so I raised her sleeve and saw 3 claw marks, deep, red and bloodied.
No.
I panicked and called the police and the ambulance. We spent the night in the station after Eliza got thoroughly checked by a doctor who was baffled by her wounds, and the police searched the area and turned up nothing.
But what did she say caused them?
I
Was
don't...
she just like, it was Susie, and they were like, yeah, but what actually did this?
Sorry, so Susie's... so I'm just writing this down. Imaginary friend. Okay. Some time passed, 3 weeks. 3 visits from social services, 0 visits from Susie. Eliza had become withdrawn. She missed her friend, but had become incredibly scared of her too. She didn't want to play with real friends, and she barely slept. I encouraged Eliza to draw Susie, and she managed multiple scrawlings, each drawn more furiously than the last. Susie resembled an adult woman with long dark hair and only 3 fingers on each hand, all clawed. The eyes were always scribbled out. I took action. I hadn't felt safe in the home since that night, so I set up cameras all over the house.
Oh, don't do that.
I sat and reviewed all of the footage every day for weeks, but nothing happened. Then, last night, I woke up to another scream. Eliza couldn't stop. She screamed for so long that I thought her lungs were going to give out. I ran as fast as I could and asked Eliza where Susie was, and she pointed to the window, saying she ran away. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. Eliza was adorable, hair in a mess across the pillow, sleeping soundly. It made me emotional watching my baby like that. All the worries melted away, until her sash window slid open. She jolted awake as what looked like 3 dirty fingernails wrapped around from the bottom of the window frame and scraped against the glass. Eliza screamed just seconds before Susie would have reached her, just before those dirty nails would have pierced her skin. The entity even took the time to look at the camera with her hollowed out sockets. I called the police and gave them the footage. They searched my house and the area around it and put us up in the same hotel as before, this time with a police car parked outside. That's where me and Eliza are spending the night. I wish they'd done more, but realistically, what can they do?
Yeah, what can they do? What are you expecting?
I just know that right now we're locked in the bathroom avoiding it. Me, Eliza and Roger, the stuffed rabbit. When she came an hour ago, Eliza's scream didn't work like before. Susie's nails are still scraping against the locked hotel window. It's bone-chilling sound. Every time I dial the police, I get a busy tone. Eliza's been screaming for so long. Why has no one come to help us?
Well, no one can help you. You need a priest.
Yeah.
Not the police.
Oh, it's gross.
That's a horrible imaginary friend. The nails.
Yeah, the 3 hands. Like, imagine it. What 3 hands? 3 fingers.
The hollowed out eyes. Everything. It's creepy.
Yeah, it's given like Grudge, but with like 3 fingers.
And I never understood like scribbling out the eyes. Like, just don't draw the eyes.
Just leave the eyes out, Eliza.
Yeah.
You don't have to scribble them.
Yeah.
Don't waste the lead.
It's just weird. Oh, that's creepy. Kids
Yeah.
are so creepy.
I know.
It's what I meant at the beginning. Kids are just creepy sometimes.
Oh.
But yeah, I've got a related watchery today.
Mm.
So I don't know if you've ever heard of a series called Ghost Inside My Child.
Yeah.
And you kind of went into like the reincarnation.
Yeah.
So this is kind of along the same vein, and it has a couple of seasons. I watched series 2, episode 5, I believe.
Mm.
And it was about a kid named Nick
Yeah.
who basically started having dreams of his own death, and he died on a battlefield.
Oh.
And he knew all these details about like civil wars. He knew what regiment he was in. He even knew the guy's name.
No way.
So his parents took them to Tennessee
Yeah.
and basically looked through the archives and found there was a guy who died where Nick said he did.
Oh, how
with
old was
the
he?
same name. He was quite young. I think he was like 13 when he went to Tennessee.
Wow.
But he had been having these dreams for like ages, and then he did actually go back to Tennessee when he was 19, I want to say, because that was the age that the guy was when he died.
Yeah.
So Nick was like, it's time to let him go and I'm going to live the life that he didn't get to have. So he went and got shown around the battlefield when he was 19. So he still had those experiences when he was 19.
That's impressive. He still could remember it as well.
Yeah, and
Wow.
he would wake up having night terrors about it, and it was so vivid. He said, like, the smells, everything. It's weird. It's a weird series. There's one that like was on the Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah. There's a lot that is on there, so it's quite a good series.
Oh, I might have to watch that.
Yeah,
I
I
find
used to
stuff-
watch it back in the day, so I remembered it, and I thought, oh, that'd be a good thing to talk about.
I find stuff like that so interesting.
Mm.
And it makes me wonder, like, what does happen when you die?
Yeah.
'Cause
I mean, that is the question, isn't it?
Rich was saying that he was watching something that said you get 2 choices.
Oh.
You get to either become part of the universe and just like, travel around where you want, but you're not a being per se, or you have another life, so you get put into another body and you live on Earth again, but you get
What
the
would
choice.
You choose?
I don't know, because
I might choose the universe, you know.
Would
I've already
you?
been here.
and it's getting worse.
Yeah, I don't want to pay bills anymore.
yeah, but it's always that fear of the unknown, isn't it?
Yeah,
like
definitely,
the other option, you just don't know what that is going to look like, but
But then we know what this is like. I
yeah.
can't cope with this anymore.
Yeah. But I thought that was so interesting. So
Yeah.
I'll be interested to know like what you guys would pick if you had that choice.
Yes, comment down below.
Yeah.
And any of your own stories, let us know, because we'd be interested to hear them.
Yeah. If any of you have kids
Yeah.
and they've said something creepy, or if you were yourself a creepy child.
If you had a weird imaginary friend,
Yeah.
let us know in the comments down below. And like always, like and subscribe if you like the video and want to see more.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, we'll see you next time.
See you later.
Bye.